Hey guys, it's your average middle-aged American back again with another reaction video. This one is going to be slightly controversial, I think. I have not seen it. We'll see it together. This is the 12 things I hate about living in Spain. If you've been watching my videos lately, you know I've been doing a lot of videos on Spain, cathedrals, castles, Madrid, and I'm quite interested in Spain. And it wasn't originally, really wasn't on my radar. You know, outside of Germany and UK and Italy. And, you know, when I think of Europe, that's kind of what I think of. No offense to Spain. My opinion is changing. Anyway, I did some videos on Spain, and this gentleman was in a couple of my videos. One of them was moving to Spain, and one of them was a walking tour of Madrid. If you haven't seen those videos, check those out. They're in my playlist for Spain. I also have a dedicated playlist for castles and cathedrals, which include all of the ones I've done so far in Europe. Anyway, this gentleman has lived in Spain for 12 years. He was not born in Spain. I believe that he married a citizen of Spain. Is it a Spaniard? I believe he married a Spaniard. If that's offensive or wrong or whatever, please correct me. I'm not familiar, but I see it in my comments a lot. So I don't know if that's just only a male reference or if that's male and female. Anyway, he married a lady who was from Spain. And I guess this is kind of a video just saying, hey, you know, Spain's not perfect like any country. It's got some things that can be improved on. And here's 12 things that he hates about Spain. So let's check it out together. And if you're new to my channel, it's anything and everything that interests me as an average middle-aged American. That includes learning about other countries and other cultures. I got to thank all my subscribers. We're up to 860 something, I believe. So we're 86% to our goal of 1,000. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button. Doesn't cost anything. Helps me and helps the channel. And enough jibber jabber. Let's see what he has to say.
So, I'm a 44-year-old man. I know I don't look it, and thank you for saying so. I have spent 12 years living in Spain, which is a quarter of my life, half of my adult life. So, I think and I hope you can tell me if I have earned the right to be pissed off about a few things in Spain. The right.
Well, I'm going to say this. If you're a citizen of Spain, yes, you have the right to be pissed off. If you're not a citizen of Spain, I'm not sure you have the right to be pissed off. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments.
To complain. Today I'm going to share 12 of the things that piss me off about Spain, one for each year I have spent in this incredible, wonderful country. Now, I make this video with a little trepidation because I do genuinely love living in Spain, and I hope my almost 150 videos celebrating this country prove that. But anytime I respect...
Yeah, guys, if you haven't checked out his video, check it out. He has a lot of great videos. I've reacted to a couple. I plan on reacting to some more of them. They're very insightful and seem to never really be boring or drag on. So give him some love. For letting people like me react to his videos, and check out some of the videos for yourself in his channel.
Fully call out something that annoys me about this country, I inevitably get the go home comments. So I'm excited to see how many go home comments I get today. Yeah. But let's begin. And I'm going to ease you in gently. Okay, so I love Christmas in Spain. From the impossible to understand lottery to the huge feasts, to making myself sick daily with turrón mantecados and polvorones, aka dust cakes. But Christmas always takes a turn for the worse when these guys pop up. Not this brand in particular, but this product. If I had an arch nemesis, it would be canned white asparagus. They're invariably served by my mother-in-law on Christmas Eve or New Year's Eve, or if I'm lucky, both. You get a massive pile of them on your plate, and to make matters worse, they're served with this big gooey dollop of mayonnaise, and the whole family is groaning at how delicious they are while I eat them one by one, closing my eyes and thinking of Mother New Zealand. Oh, even the smell makes me want to hide. And to make matters worse, they come in a variety of sizes, but including really big. So they come from normal to fat to very fat, muy grueso. And the big ones are called cojonudos, which kind of loosely translates as the dog's bollocks, because it's apparently what the former king said when he was served a plate of delicious and enormous canned white asparagus, presumably at Christmas Eve or New Year's Eve, or if he was lucky, both. But anyway, that's some light, hate-filled entertainment to sort of kick us off and get us in the mood. But now let's move on to some more serious topics.
I don't know anything about canned asparagus. I don't eat asparagus. I don't want anything to do with asparagus. I'm kind of actually confused. Does he like it or does he not like it? And is this a normal thing? I mean, are you guys just eating plates full of canned white asparagus with half a jar of mayonnaise on it? Let me know in the comment section. And as far as if you don't like it, leave, that's a very common term in America when people are protesting or complaining or just about any time. It's almost like a rubber stamp response. You don't like it, leave. Yeah, I'm not with the asparagus. And if he doesn't like it, why is he eating platefuls of it? Why don't you just say, hey, thank you anyway, I don't like it. It's not like there's a lot of prep involved, right? I mean, they took it out of a can, maybe, you know, heated it up a little bit and then threw some mayonnaise on it. It's not like somebody sat there for 8 hours and made this delicacy and you're trying not to be rude. Let me know. I can tell you this right now. When I go to Spain, I'm not eating white asparagus. No offense to anybody.
Welcome to the bosom of Spanish democracy. This is the Spanish Parliament where the laws of the land are made. And
Cool.
yes, I have a beef with the men and women inside. You see, there are few things more frustrating than living in a country, loving a country, having a family in a country, paying taxes, starting businesses in a country, and yet you cannot vote in the national elections because that is a privilege that is reserved for Spanish citizens, and I am a lowly permanent resident. Fair enough, you say, James. Just go ahead and get your Spanish citizenship. What's the big deal? Well, the thing is, to take Spanish citizenship, by Spanish law, I would have to renounce my New Zealand citizenship, and I don't really want to do that to my mother. Look, in a practical sense, I could have both citizenships and nobody would really care, but should I have to be able to vote? And as I looked into this more, I learned it's actually a thing. There's a whole Wikipedia page on what's called non-citizen suffrage. And it turns out that requiring people to be citizens in order to vote is more the rule than the exception. See, here I am as a naive New Zealander thinking that was how it was everywhere, because in New Zealand, you only have to be a permanent resident to vote. But these guys in the Spanish Parliament aren't going to change it. So let's see what my fellow Spaniards think.
So, I mean, what's the big deal, honestly? I mean, no offense, but you get a lot of advantages moving to Spain. I mean, the dollar goes a lot further. I don't know much about New Zealand, but I know if you move from America with a healthy bank account, you're living like a king in Spain. So I would gladly give up the right to vote. And what is the right to vote in Spain? Are you a straight democracy? I doubt it, but I could be wrong. You know, or do you have some kind of crazy system like we do where you have the electoral college and each state has a certain amount of votes and the popular vote of that state is basically how that state, it's an all or nothing thing, and it's a big mess. So if Spain's like that, what are you really losing? And no, I wouldn't renounce my citizenship for any country, any other country, because you never know, you know, if civil war breaks out or something, you want to move back home. I wouldn't do that. But let me know how the system works. Are you voting for representatives who vote for things, or are you voting direct and it's just a straight popular vote?
Soy neozelandés, llevo 12 años en España, tengo una hija aquí, un negocio, pago impuestos. ¿Crees que debería tener derecho a votar en las elecciones generales? Sí. Muchas gracias. So there you have it.
She said C because you're in her face. She's going to say no. No, you shouldn't. Go away. I heard his daughter can vote, right? If she was born there, she's a citizen, I assume. It's the way it is in America. Hey, in America, we got people voting that don't even have IDs. So who cares? Who cares if there's an extra million votes in there somewhere, that addresses that don't exist and people that don't have any kind of an identification? Who cares? Who cares if you voted 5 times and you're dead? Who cares? Yeah, well, it'll work itself out. That's how we do it here. It'll work itself out. Everything will be all right. No, I don't think you should be able to vote as a resident citizen, as a resident. What do they call it? Permanent resident? If that's the law, that's the law. Get your wife to vote to change the law, maybe. And your daughter. So that when you're like 80 years old, you might be able to vote. Not that big a deal to me. I vote, but I'm also not foolish enough to think that my vote makes some major difference when there's 330 million people in my country. So let me know how your system works. Is a vote that important? Like in America, there's 50 states and I think there's 5 populated territories. They don't get to vote. The 50 states get to vote. But like 45 of those states vote the same way all the time. So it's like, if you're not in one of the, they call them swing states, then it's not really that big of a deal. In America, you can win the popular vote and still not win the presidency. It's all based on which states voted for who, and it's a big mess. Now, do I think the popular vote should win? No, I don't, because it doesn't represent the people, because some of the biggest cities in the country are bigger than some of the states in population. So you can't have somebody in California and someone in New York voting on how a person in Oklahoma and Texas and Kansas live. You know, it has to be representative by their state.
People of Spain have spoken. I should be able to vote along with my fellow permanent residents. So come on, guys, change the law.
One person.
No, café solo, por favor. Qué bien. Okay, so there is nothing quite like sitting down in a Spanish bar in the morning for breakfast and soaking up the atmosphere, the buzz of the patrons, the shouts of the waiters, the hiss of the coffee machine, the smell of churros. Everything in the world is perfect until you take a sip of the coffee. Welcome to the wonderful world of torrefacto. If you've never heard of it, it's a historically fascinating yet gastronomically terrifying process whereby sugar is burnt onto the outside of the coffee bean. It originated, I believe, in Mexico, where miners would use this process to preserve their coffee when they were taking it down underground for months at a time. And it was brought to Spain because it was a great way to ship coffee around the country without its...
Wait a minute. You're telling me that miners went underground for months at a time? Like didn't come back out like every day? Like a shift? Like 6 hours, 8 hours, 10-hour shift? They just lived underground? Mining? What could go wrong?
Spoiling. And the tradition for our sins continues today in Spain, meaning that when you drink straight black espresso coffee in a bar, it'll taste bitter, kind of acrid, with hints of the apocalypse. And in fact, I believe that the fact that most Spaniards will drink their black coffee with sugar or with milk, café con leche, is to mask the flavor, the true flavor of the coffee, because without either of those things, you really are exposed to the true taste of the abomination. I don't want to cast shade on this fantastic bar, Taberna Real. They're just serving the coffee that's traditional here in Spain. But if you're in Madrid and you want a spot to grab a vermouth and an excellent plate of jamón ibérico de bellota acorn-fed ham, this is your spot. To be fair, the coffee in Spain is getting better, for my taste anyway, less and less torrefacto. So much so that I fear that one day I might actually miss the flavor of torrefacto, because it will be the flavor, however bitter, of the Spain that I fell in love with. Which brings me to my next hate that I hate.
Okay, I'm confused. I'm not a coffee drinker. I've never drank a cup of coffee in my life. I drink Diet Coke, Coke Zero. That's my morning beverage. I know it's healthy. But I don't eat breakfast either, so I don't know anything about coffee other than why in the world would you drink something that tastes horrible? I mean, if that's the true feeling about this espresso or this type of coffee, why drink it? You can get caffeine other ways. You can get caffeine in a pill. You could drink a soda. You could drink American coffee or British coffee or whatever other coffee. If this is so bad, I get it, he's exaggerating to be funny, but clearly there's an underlying thing here that it does not taste good. Let me know. Do you drink this? Does it taste good to you? I mean, is this one of these things like cigarettes where, yeah, it tastes horrible, but you get a little buzz from it, and then next thing you know, you can't live without it? Let me know, because I have no clue when it comes to coffee or cigarettes. Of course, I'm the same guy that thinks whiskey tastes like gasoline, so what do I know? Just let me know what you think.
Have about Spain, and that is change. So when I first moved to Spain, I fell in love, deeply in love, not just with Yoli, but with Madrid. I loved wandering this historic center, this quiet historic center, sort of a mysterious part of the city, and stumbling across old man bars that were full of locals and little shops that were selling, things that the neighbors needed, little idiosyncratic shops, little curiosities like this one, this fantastic secondhand bookshop that's just tucked away here. In short, what I loved was Madrid's idiosyncrasy. But over the years, I've watched as that idiosyncrasy has been eroded as a lot of chains and franchises have moved in, and the mom and pop shops, those small neighborhood shops, have been pushed out. For example, when I used
See, when I look at this video, it looks so charming to me. It's almost romantic, it just looks wonderful. It just looks like a wonderful place to live. These cities like this become overrun with, corporate conglomerates and, chain stores and all that. I can't help to think that this is some of the reason that there's so much dislike for Americans and America, is that it's all our fault that the world, is turning into this. We have the same problem here in America. There she is. There she is. She won't be quiet, so she gets to sit up here with Daddy. The same thing happens here in America, where, you take a lot of these small towns, especially like coffee shops and stuff like that, where Starbucks just opens up a store on all four corners, and drives them out of business. Or for a while it was bookstores, record shops, things like that, drugstores, your mom and pop pharmacy versus the giant chain stores, grocery stores, obviously. I've always lived in big cities, so I don't really know that much different, but I could see the hatred, to turning some charming little place into corporate. They call it corporate America here. You happier now? You happier now? This is my little girl. Look how cute she is. Look how cute she is. She loves her daddy. And she hasn't meowed all day. She's sitting in her bed all day. And then as soon as I started this video, she started meow. Meow, 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 meow. That's what she does. She says, Daddy, who are you talking to? Who are you talking to? Look at how cute she is. 18 years old and counting. That's like 100 in cat years. At least that's what we tell ourselves. Okay. Say bye. Bye-bye. See you later. Meow. Go get in your bed. 18 years old. I hope I'm doing as good as she is when I'm 100. Whatever the real age is. So yeah, I can understand the disgust with kind of losing the charm, losing the neighborhood per se. You guys feel like that all over Spain, or is it just, you know, the major cities? Let me know.
Used to give tours here, food tours, about 8 or so years ago. This money changer here on the corner was just a tiny little old man bar, a local old man bar, just like you see all over Spain. It was right here in the Puerta del Sol. And the idea of an old man bar here in the Puerta del Sol now is just unthinkable. Or this place here, this was one of my favorite bars in the center of Madrid, Tenerife, that they sold the best tortilla in the city. You can almost see the name up there. And now it's a premier burger bar because it's right here, right by the Mercado at San Miguel, right in the center of Madrid. Look, I know what you're thinking, or at least what you should be thinking. You're thinking, but James, this is touristification that causes this, and you're partly to blame for that. And also, you benefit from it. Look, in the videos that I make and in Devour Tours as well, I've always tried to celebrate the idiosyncratic places, the mom and pop shops, and help those thrive. And I think to some extent, I've been successful at that, but I realize there's an undesired spillover effect. It's part of the reason that from now on, I want to make more videos that celebrate the off the beaten path parts of Spain, the less known parts. So now you're thinking, James, you're going to destroy those as well? Look, let's not overplay my influence here, but I did want to share this because I felt like it's the elephant in the room, and I love making videos about this country and celebrating my love for this country, but it still frustrates me, the changes that I see in Madrid.
I think it's all, you know, listen, my wife and I are tourists. My parents are tourists. My parents are going to Spain next month. Spain and Portugal. And they've been many times. But I think a majority of it has to do with how you handle yourself when you're there or anywhere, when you're a tourist. Are you helping the economy, or are you hurting the environment? And I don't mean the climate environment. I mean, you know, the environment. You know, I hear that, you know, going to Rome is just nothing but tourists everywhere, and it's hardly even worth the headache. And that's sad. So I see both sides of it. Obviously, I want to learn more about Spain and Europe, you know, everywhere that people talk about. Germany. I mean, Germany, I got started on this little adventure by watching a video about Germany. My aunt used to work for the United States Army. She wasn't in the Army, but she worked for the Army as a upper middle management person. And she was stationed in Germany, and she loved it. She loved everything about it. I never went to see her over there. I wish I had. But I didn't know. You know, I was young. So I want to see Germany. My wife wants to see England. I have, you know, Scottish ancestors. I want to see Scotland. You know, I want to see the castles in Wales. I want to see, obviously, Italy, you know. And now I'm very interested in Spain. And the cost of living in Spain has just opened my eyes to, is there a world that I can live in Spain for a month or two a year based on the cost of living when I'm retired? Wow, that would be something I'd never thought of in my life. But if 50 million people think the same way I do, then Spain's going to be a mess. So I get it. I get it both ways. But 13% of your GDP is based on tourism. So you can't just ignore the important part of the tourism money. You just got to find that balance. And I don't know how to do that. I just think it needs to come through taxation of some sort. Impact fees, taxation, it's all kind of the same thing. You know, you can literally double the price of taxis, you know, unless you have a local ID, you know, that kind of thing. And we can argue about that in the other video I made about living in Spain, but yeah, there needs to be a solution so that, because you're going to end up losing the charm that makes the place so desirable. So then you won't have the charm and you won't have the tourism. So that's terrible. Let me know your thoughts in the comments.
Hola, ¿qué tal? Dime. Oye, te voy a parar.
Just look at that. What is that? Is that a hotel? Is that a bunch of apartments? I mean, that's probably a pretty normal building from what I see in other videos. But that would be like the finest hotel, you know, in my city. It's incredible. Just so much to see, so much to do, so much to learn. Just look at that place. And I'm sure that that's just an average whatever. But it isn't to me.
Es que sí. Es que me has llamado 10 veces hoy, ya. Bueno, es que no puedo más, por favor, no puedo, no quiero tu oferta, aunque sea la mejor oferta de mi vida. Por favor, déjame en paz. Okay, that was a terrible reenactment. But I can't handle the spam phone calls in Spain. They're out of control. So it'll generally play out like this. You're in the middle of something that is really hard to do at the same time as speak on the phone, such as cooking dinner or changing the baby's nappy, and someone will call you. You pick up, there'll be silence for a moment, then a click, and then a voice that sounds like they're 10,000 miles away and in a room with 10,000 other muffled voices will greet you overly politely and then try and sell you the world's best mobile phone offer. And sometimes there's nobody there and you just listen to silence saying hola, hola, as if somewhere someone is watching you. But spam phone calls have increased massively in Spain since the pandemic. We're now ranked 5 in the world, with the average person receiving 18 a month, which is nothing quite like the Brazilians. They get 50 a month. I mean, the Brazilians must be on the phone listening to silence and being watched and being sold mobile phone contracts all the time. There is a list you can sign up for called the Robinson list that legally companies should check it before they call you. It's to opt out of these calls, but it worked a little bit for me, but it didn't really work for Yoli at all. And the insidious part is that sometimes these aren't just spam phone calls, they're scam phone calls, often trying to trick people into changing electricity companies, and often they get older people who aren't as savvy with this kind of thing. But funny story, I actually received a spam phone call just when I was preparing this part of the video. I tried to explain the irony to the person who called me, but sadly, they didn't get it.
So that's a real big problem in America. So many scams. Yeah, we have a lot of spam and a lot of scam in America, more than Spain. And unfortunately, we are probably the target of the world when it comes to actual scams, probably based on our economy. And I'm not going to name individual countries, but there are countries that are responsible, and there's only a handful of them. And why the American government doesn't do something about it is beyond me. Because all you have to do is say, we're cutting all your aid until you figure this out. And guess what? It would be figured out in a month. But we don't. There's days I've gotten 10 a day. And I usually don't answer the phone. So it's not that big of a deal because my phone has caller ID and it tells me who's calling. And you could even set up, I assume it's the same on your phones. You know, my phone will even ring differently depending on who's calling me. So it's not that big of a deal for me, but yeah, my office phone is nonstop. And it's bad. And well, let's look it up. I guarantee you we're probably in the billions of dollars scammed out of people. Americans lost $29.8 billion to phone scams over the past year. 19% fell victim more than once. 60 million Americans lost money to phone scams. So think about that. 60 million people lost $30 billion. And it's usually old people. And then there's another $10 billion for internet scams. The problem is it's outside of the country most of the time. So there's not a lot that our law enforcement can do about it. But if our government would just cut off aid, you know, we just throw money at countries everywhere all the time, which is fine to help people. But we're helping the same people that are ripping us off. And even if we're not helping them, we're trading with them. So cut the trade, cut the help, cut the aid until this stuff gets figured out. It's not fair. People that have lost their entire life savings because they were too nice and too trusting and quite frankly, too ignorant. It's sad. So you're talking $40 billion in a year Americans lost to scams. It's really disgusting.
Okay, so the next topic is an important one, and that's racism. Look, Spain is a country where casual racism is relatively common, and perhaps more frustrating is the inability or unwillingness of a lot of people to see racism for what it is when it's right in front of them. Let me give you a couple of examples. One, this famous candy here, this much-loved candy called Conguitos. This brand was created in the early 60s, you know, in a totally different time, actually just after Congo achieved independence. Now, the name of the candy, Conguitos, doesn't really mean anything, but it suggests a diminutive form of people from the Congo, sort of little Congolese or little people from the Congo. And the mascot is a black man, a sort of a round, chubby black man with big red lips. So in other words, it's a branding that's from a total different time and should be retired. Now, there was pushback against this in 2020, about the same time as the Black Lives Matter protests, and the brand La Casa responded to the criticism. They said a couple of things. One was that the actual mascot doesn't represent a person from the Congo or even a person. They said it just represents two candies on top of each other, which obviously is ridiculous. And they also said, we also have white Conguitos, white chocolate Conguitos, and those are represented by a white character. And there's a parallel to that response in this next story about Spain's Christmas parade. So every year in Spain, there are Christmas parades, and it's the three wise men who brought the gifts to Jesus who parade through the town dressed up. Now, traditionally, one of these men, Baltasar, is represented as a black man. The idea is he's a black man or a Middle Eastern man. And there's a tradition in Spain, there's a practice of a white man dressing up in blackface to represent Baltasar. Now, this happens a lot less than it used to, rightly so, but it still happens. And so it happened this year in some places. And in one place, Igualada, a town in Catalonia, a white man dressed up in blackface to represent this character. Now, there was protest about this, there was outrage, and the organizers of the parade responded, which I think, again, is telling. They said, participation for this celebration is open to the entire population without any type of distinction or discrimination. They went on to say, for those that dress up, i.e. in blackface, it's an honor, it's not a degrading thing. Now, let me be really clear, because when I talk about this topic, it always kind of blows up in the comments, understandably. unreservedly. I am not saying that all Spaniards are racist, but I'm giving two clear examples where racism is allowed to pass muster today in Spain on a corporate level and on an institutional level, and where the people who are propagating that don't make a change and actually push back against it, showing this sort of inability or unwillingness to recognize it for what it is. Now, having said that, I do want to hear what your thoughts are and your perspectives in the comments, particularly people who live in Spain. So drop your thoughts in the comments and let's try and have a civil conversation about it.
Well, I don't live in Spain. I live in America. 13% of the population in America is black. If you're not living in America and you watch the news, you would think that every person in America is racist. And it couldn't be further from the truth. I don't want to get into a big thing about racism, but here's the thing with racism. It goes both ways. It doesn't matter what color you are. You can be racist. So white people can be racist, black people can be racist, Spanish people can be racist, anybody can be racist. Now, on the flip side of that, when I look at some of this, like this gentleman right here that was smiling, these little cartoon characters of these candies or whatever, I see it both ways. This guy right here is clearly not making fun of black people. I mean, that's like a king, That's not somebody making fun or degrading a black person, in my opinion. And, without getting too controversial, that's quite a bit different than, blackface from the 40s and 50s, where, they have, just a very different approach. Like, this is a little more controversial to me, than this other gentleman. No, I don't think it's it's okay to make fun of anybody. But you have a lot of other things that become controversial that don't even have really controversy for most people, and then it's like you're supposed to be outraged. I'll give you an example. This is Aunt Jemima syrup, like for pancakes and waffles. Now, when I see a picture of this woman, I don't see anything racist about it. It's Aunt Jemima. She's been around for 50 years or something. I don't know. This isn't. There's no characterization here of anything that is not on the same level as a white person or whatever. I don't think of that. I don't know the entire history of Aunt Jemima syrup, and quite frankly, I don't really care. But that's not something that I look at and think that's racist. Here's another one. Well, here's a bunch of them. This was a whole thing that happened in America. This is Uncle Ben's Rice. It's a company that makes rice, Uncle Ben. That up in the top right corner or top left corner. It's just a black gentleman, an older black gentleman, Uncle Ben. He makes rice. This is Mrs. Butterworth. Down in the, in the bottom right corner is another syrup for pancakes. To me, I don't find these things to be crazy, to be racist, to be logos that are putting anybody down. I just don't see that. Everybody's different. Everyone's got their own opinion. But I find that when this whole race thing happens, people become outraged and they don't even know why they're outraged. They're just told they should be outraged. This group of people here, I'm not sure I agree with that at all.
Sort of inability or unwillingness to recognize it for what it is. Now, having said that, I do want to hear what your thoughts are and your perspectives in the comments, particularly people who live in Spain. So drop your thoughts in the comments and let's try and have a civil conversation about it. So recently on Instagram, I said that one of the things I find frustrating about Spain is the level of customer service, that it's not good. And I got some pushback, and that was fair enough because people said rightly that not all customer service is bad in Spain. So if you go to your local corner bar, your local corner hardware store, your local corner hairdressers, it's going to be great. Anything in your neighborhood is going to be great and personal. But the minute you have to deal with a big company in Spain, namely internet companies, mobile phone companies, insurance companies, banks, it's going to be horrendous. Now, recently I've had some really negative experiences with banks.
That's probably because they don't have any skin in the game. When you go to your local, barber, or hair salon or nail salon or, small restaurant, family-owned restaurant, they have skin in the game. They own it. If they don't keep their customers happy, they're going to go out of business. If you're, working for a bank for $10 or $12 an hour or whatever it is, you don't care. Worst case, you get fired, you go work for another bank. Now, I will tell you that in America, usually customer service is pretty good. Some of that has to do with tipping in restaurants and bars and stuff, but some of it just has to do with the expectations, I think. And he may not be getting the same service because he's, from New Zealand. I mean, just because he speaks Spanish doesn't mean that people can't tell he's not from there. So maybe that's some of it. Maybe it's a hint of both. Maybe it's poor customer service and a tad of racism or anti-tourism. That is something that I am used to being treated well when I go places. And
so I'm going to single those guys out for this one. So in short, I hate dealing with banks in Spain. Okay, first example. So recently Yoli had a question about an insurance policy that we have with an insurance company, but through our bank. Effectively, her question was about a specific thing I want to know. Do I deal directly with the insurance company or do I go through the bank? And so she called up our personal banker at Bank Inter, our bank. Now, note, this is not our actual branch to protect the identity of the very rude person that Yoli spoke to. So Yoli called the personal banker and asked innocently who she should be dealing with in this situation. Note that the job of the personal banker is to answer questions, but the personal banker completely wrung her out. Yoli should have known that she should have called the info line of the bank directly and not called and bothered the personal banker. She scolded her and told her off. Ironically, she also answered Yoli's question. But what this illustrates is no matter how asinine or innocent or banal you're dealing with a bank.
Let me tell you something. Nobody tells me off without either losing their job or wishing they had lost their job. So I don't know why. I mean, okay, I get it. If the level of service isn't there, but why would you put up with it? What's to stop you from cussing them out or telling them off or pulling all your money out, going to a different bank? I honestly can't say that I've ever been told off by anybody that was working somewhere. Ever. Now, I'm not the smallest guy in the world. Not everybody wants to get up in my face, but I mean, he's saying that she got told off by another woman. See, in America, people lose their jobs for stuff like that. I mean, that just doesn't fly. Now, if you go in there being a jerk, maybe you get it back. But if you're just asking a question about an insurance policy that they made money on, yeah, that doesn't fly in my world. And I'm not saying I'll get better service, but I sure the hell won't stand for it. You're not going to. Especially if she had talked like that to my wife and I was there, God help everybody in that bank.
It might be, or your question might be, invariably it will end in confrontation. Also, the banks have incredibly short hours in which you can actually do things at the branches. Inevitably, when you go, it will be too late to do that thing that you needed to do. So if you arrive at 11:05 a.m., you could only have done that thing that you needed to do between 9 a.m. and 11 a.m.
What?
It's as if the bank staff work with such angry intensity that they can only sustain it for short periods of time. So
that doesn't even make any sense. In every bank that I've ever been to, probably, All right, so this is a typical American bank. The lobby, which means the building itself, well, I'm sure you know what a lobby is open from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So 9 to 5. We call that banking hours. That's literally the name. 9 to 5 is called banking hours or banker's hours. It's almost a joke. You only work in banker's hours? It's an American thing. And then the drive-through is open 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And then some banks are open from like 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. in the lobby, and then like 4 to 6 in the drive-through. So yeah, you can get a lot of things done through the, you drive around like a fast food restaurant. So you can make deposits, you can cash checks, you just give them, I don't even know if you have drive-throughs there or not, but give them your driver's license, you give them your check, you sign it, they look up your account, just like a fast food restaurant. And they send cash through a machine. And then I've had banks that actually have hours on Saturday from usually like maybe like 9 to 12, like 9 a.m. to noon, just in case. And I've had banks open as late as 7 p.m. on Fridays. Friday's like a day a lot of people cash paychecks and stuff, or withdraw money for the weekend, that kind of thing. So a lot of times Fridays are open a little bit later, at least the drive-through is. But minimum hours for any normal bank, minimum would be 9 to 4. And yeah, if you walk in there at 5 minutes to 4 and you're trying to do something that takes a half an hour, like, you know, open up some investment, you know, bonds or something, you know, certificates of deposit or whatever, yeah, I could see them asking you to come back the next day or whatever. But as long as the right person's at the bank, you know, not on their lunch break or something, you can get just about anything done for sure between the hours of like 10 and 3. For sure. Because there's always somebody there. There's usually you know, the branch manager can usually do anything. You know, different people have different levels of authority. You know, if you want to cash a $25,000 check, you know, it may take, you know, an hour of notice or something so they can get some money from another bank or whatever. But yeah, no, we don't play the 9 to 11 you get to cash checks, and from 11 to 12 you get to make deposits, and from 12 to 1 you can open up a loan. That we don't do that. Banking hours is usually 35 to 50 hours a week the bank's open.
There's something strange that happens sometimes when I get my hair cut in Spain.
Oh, and there's a law, federal law in America, where a bank cannot be closed more than, I think, 3 days. It's either 3 days or maybe 4 days. So like when a holiday comes, let's say there's a holiday on a Monday, they can be closed for the Saturday and Sunday and Monday, but they have to be open on Tuesday, and they had to have been open on last Friday. So I think it's 3 days. It may be 4, but I think it's 3 because we don't ever have any holidays that fall more than 2 days in a row. I mean, more than, you know, 1 day. There's never a holiday that's more than 1 day, or 2 holidays that fall right next to each other. And that's to stop people from not being able to get their money. You know, if there's a stock market crash or something and everybody starts panicking, wants to pull their money out of the banks, which are all insured by the United States government, so it's not a big deal. But, you know, there's laws about that too. So the banks have to be open a certain amount of hours, they have to be open a certain amount of days, and they have to have a certain amount of cash on hand. They don't have to have all the money on hand, but they have to have a percentage on hand so that people are entitled to get their money out of the bank within a 24-hour time period or whatever it is.
I'll be chatting to the hairdresser and, you know, at some point they will say invariably, oh, where are you from? And I will say, New Zealand, Nueva Zelanda. And at that point, they'll pause for a moment and they'll say, ooh, it must be very cold up there. And I'll think, up there? And then I realize, and I say this has happened about 3 times while I'm getting my hair cut, that they think that New Zealand is somewhere in Northern Europe, deep in Northern Europe. You know, it could be the Netherlands, it's not quite clear. And this doesn't just happen with hairdressers. I don't mean to pick on hairdressers. It happens with bartenders, taxi drivers, you know, the kind of people who you don't know them, but you just engage in a little bit of chit chat and, you know, open up a little bit about yourself. And so what I say now when they ask is I say, I'm from New Zealand next to Australia. They pause for a moment and say, ooh, it must be really hot down there. But to be honest, this doesn't really bother me that much. I know New Zealand is a small place and there's plenty of countries that I couldn't place on a map or wouldn't be quite sure where they're from. But there is a variation of this that does get my goat a little bit. And this often happens with people who maybe I've been working with them a little bit, and at some point they will ask me a question about where I'm from, or they'll introduce me to a colleague of theirs and they'll say, this is James, he's English. So next up, nepotism. Now, nepotism is rife in Spanish society, in all levels of Spanish society, from the corner store, small businesses, right up to the highest echelons of government. And why it really frustrates me is because I see a lot of businesses struggle in this country, and although nepotism isn't the only reason, it's like they're not putting their best foot forward if they're hiring cousins to do their translations or their website instead of getting the best person for the job. But it's quite hard to hate this aspect of Spanish society because it comes from a good place.
Family.
In the end, this is a society where family networks and friend networks are really strong. And if someone in a family is struggling, then it's kind of the whole family's problem to gather around and try and provide help to that person. But to understand nepotism in Spain properly, I feel like we should talk to a Spaniard. So let's cross live to our Spanish correspondent. Yoli.
Yeah? Oh, hi.
Question. Do you think Spanish people think nepotism is a problem?
I don't think they find a problem. Like, there's enchufe everywhere in this country, so it's like they see it all very normal. Like, why would I give this job to anyone else but my cousin, you know? They will see the problem only if maybe politicians do it, like someone in parliament. They will be very critical about that, but they don't realize that they did that last week with their cousin, you know? I mean,
Do you have a problem with nepotism?
Yeah, totally, and I've never practiced it.
Very good.
That I can recall.
Correct. Okay, huddle up, because there's a cultural phenomenon in this country that really drives me nuts. And it's something that I think degrades the quality of our society and impacts significantly on Spain's productivity. Here's the thing, in Spain, employers and employees.
Okay, what I was about to say and what I regret saying was that employers and employees hate each other. But that's not true, that's too strong. What there is deep mistrust between employees and employers. Okay, back to the video.
All too often, employers think that employees are lazy and trying to rip them off, and employees think that employers are greedy and trying to take advantage of them. Case in point, I have a friend who was recently working at a deli in Madrid. It got to the end of the first month and it was payday. She got her pay slip and it was 30% short. She went to her boss and she was like, hey, I'm missing some money here. The boss pulled out an envelope of cash and handed it to her. That was the missing 30%. He paid her in cash. Now, she knew exactly what was going on because this is a very common occurrence. What he was doing was paying her the 30% in cash so that he didn't have to pay the social security contributions on that 30%. The upshot is she doesn't get that 30% put towards her retirement or unemployment fund. But again, she knew exactly what was going on because it happens so often. Now, I know what some people are thinking. They're thinking, James, social security contributions are so high in Spain. The small company couldn't afford it. This was a big company that is all over the country. They should have paid her properly, right? But for me,
wouldn't she also save money on her taxes? I'm not saying paying cash is the right thing to do to avoid taxes, but it's not all a negative against her, is it? Because if she gets paid in cash, then she doesn't have to pay taxes. Doesn't she pay towards her own Social Security? Let me know. In America, I actually have a business degree, so I can talk about this a little bit. You both pay. So your employer pays your taxes for your Social Security and for your Medicare, which is like medical insurance for when you're elderly. And then Social Security, I assume, is the same in Spain, which is after you retire, you get a check based on how much you made and contributed throughout your life. You'll get a check every month until you die. In America, that check is somewhere around, it's usually between, I think for most people, it's between $1,000 and $2,000 a month. So it's not a lot of money, but you know, if your finances are under control and you save some money, you'll be okay. You know, you're not going to live like a king off of it for sure. Some people, I think the maximum is maybe $3,500 a month, you know, for people that have paid in a lot. The people that paid the most get the least in percentage, if that makes any sense, because it's the same as our income tax rate. The more you make, not only the more you pay, but the higher percentage you pay. 10% of the United States population pays 70% of the income tax. So anytime you hear one of these politicians say the rich need to pay their fair share, they're full of it, because the rich pay more than their fair share. And I'm not rich, but facts are facts. Anyway, so in America, Social Security and Medicare only adds up to maybe 7.5%, maybe 8%. So you pay it and your employer pays it. So it's a total of 16%, 15 or 16% of your check, of your pay, your gross pay. But like I said, half of it is the employee's responsibility. And then on top of that, they have their own income tax that they would pay, which the employer doesn't pay that. They withhold it from their check and they send it to the government, but it doesn't come out of their money. So in theory, in America, if somebody pays you cash, that's a beneficial thing to an employee, more so than the employer, because the employer can't write off the money that they paid you as an expense, because where did it come from? So it's a whole thing. But I am curious how much you guys pay, so I'm going to look it up right now. Yikes. Okay, so that's why. Employees pay 6.47%. Employers pay 30.48%. Plus a variable rate for occupational accidents. For example, 1.5% for office work. Yeah, so that's a big difference. See, in America, the employer pays exactly the same as the employee. Big difference. So you guys are collecting, good grief, you guys are collecting 37% of your paycheck for Social Security? Wow. Social Security is 6.2%. And Medicare is 1.45%. So yeah, 7.65. So 7.5%. So I was right. So the employer pays 7.5 and the employee pays 7.5. So that's 15%. So we're paying 15% and you guys are paying 37%. Wow. Big difference. I mean, if you're making $100,000 a year, you're paying $37,000 towards Social Security. Now that doesn't even include income tax. Oh my goodness. So you can pay another 15 to 23%. Call it 15 to 20% for most people. So 37 plus 17, you're paying 55% of your paycheck in taxes? Good grief. See, America, we would pay about 25% total. We're paying less than half of what you're paying. Now, I think that your Social Security probably pays out more than ours does, but still, you're paying twice as much in taxes.
The whole skimping on the pay thing and the fact that it's really common is just indicative of how screwed up the employment relationships are in this country. So, did you know that Spain invented red tape? Literally, Charles I of Spain in the 16th century decided that he needed to modernize the bureaucracy of the country, and so he started wrapping important documents that needed high-level attention in red tape. Ironically, it didn't work. So it means that Spain, as well as being the granddaddy of red tape, continues to excel at making people's lives miserable with it. And bureaucracy in Spain is such a cliche that I almost didn't include it. But then I stumbled across something. I stumbled across this email, and I just thought I need to get this email into this video. It is remarkable. More about that email in a moment. You see, I, as many of you know, run a course, an online course that helps people move to Spain, helps people relocate to Spain, called the Move to Spain Masterclass. And I experienced through the people who take the course all levels of Spanish bureaucracy at its most miserable. And so I wanted to share with you 3 aspects of Spanish bureaucracy that really do piss me off. First of all, nobody ever knows the answer to your question. And it could be the most simple question about how to do some sort of bureaucratic process, but nobody knows the answer. In fact, it almost seems like the answer doesn't exist. And so if you ask someone in the bureaucracy for how to do that thing, what is the list of documents that I need? It's always kind of like, well, it depends. They'll kind of dodge the answer, and you're like, well, what does it depend on? And they'll be like, maybe it depends on the region of Spain you live in, maybe it depends on the time of day, and maybe it depends, or often it depends, on the person you're dealing with, the actual bureaucrat you're dealing with. But it means that every process is kind of shrouded in mystery. And the second one is that any bureaucratic document or website is always written in the most cryptic, formal language so that people have no ability, even if they're native Spanish speakers who, have studied philosophy and technical writing, they can't understand it. It's a mixture of vagueness and highly formal writing, and it's almost as if that the bureaucrats think that by writing in clear Spanish, they'll be giving up some sort of power, which of course they don't want to do. Or maybe they think that if they write it in normal Spanish, then, in a way they're not doing their job. Their job is to write like bureaucrats. Third, and this is where we return to this email here, this wonderful email, the Spanish bureaucracy is incredibly and fascinatingly technologically inept. So this email is an automatic reply that I received to an email I sent to a Spanish consulate in the United States. Although it's outside of Spain, it's still part of the Spanish bureaucracy, a core part of the Spanish bureaucracy. And I would like to meet the person who wrote this email. I would like to get into their mind. I think they should be studied. It is wonderful. Don't you think? It's only missing emojis and Comic Sans. Okay, last one. And if you don't already, you're gonna think I'm a bit of a Grinch after this one, but I think it's something that would drive you crazy too. So I love how gregarious Spanish culture is. This is a country where people will stop and chat and spend the time without looking at their watch and really be happy in your company. But there's an aspect of this gregariousness that I just can't handle. And it's called the long Spanish goodbye. So picture this, you're at a party with your friends or maybe your partner, and you agree as a group or with your partner that it's time to leave, it's time to get going. Now, international custom dictates that from the moment of agreeing to leave as a group or as a couple, you have about 10 minutes to get out the door. But that rule doesn't apply in Spain. Here, the Spaniard will spend the next hour slowly inching towards the door and engaging in any potential conversation that comes their way. Maybe they'll see someone they haven't spoken to yet while they're on their way to the bathroom for a wee before they go. Or they'll realize there's something they haven't mentioned to that person they've been talking to for the last 4 hours. And look, I wouldn't mind this if it was agreed that we're not going to leave for another hour, and I would just get another drink and enjoy myself. But what I can't handle is living for an hour in this kind of goodbye no man's land. Okay, but I do remind you, after all of this, I do love living in this wonderful country. In fact, there was only one thing one thing that I hate about Spain that I couldn't fit into this list. It's those really long pillows that you get in hotel rooms, almost medieval pillows where you can't kind of get your arm under it to get comfortable. Yeah, I hate those too. But this is not going to be a long goodbye. I'll see you in the next video, and I promise it's going to be full of Spain love, butterflies, and joy. Bye-bye.
Well, there you go, guys. It's an interesting video. I think that some of these things apply in every country, or at least most countries. At least most countries of the size of Spain or larger. Yeah, some of that stuff is going to drive me nuts. I mean, there's just no reason not to be helpful. If you're at work, there's no reason to act like you're being bothered when your job is to help people. There's no reason to take an hour to get out the door. That's more annoying to me if I'm hosting the party than if I'm leaving the party, I guess. But yeah, some interesting stuff. Check out his channel. It's a great channel. Let me know your thoughts. If you're new to my channel, it's anything and everything that interests me as an average middle-aged American. Learning about other countries and other cultures. Planning on doing a lot of visiting Europe. And right now we're checking out Spain. And I like what I see. I'm very shocked at your Social Security rates, but it probably all washes out. I think you guys have a lot cheaper medical than we do, and probably get more money in retirement than we do. So I'm sure it all averages out. If you're new to my channel, check out my other videos. I've got videos on castles, cathedrals, Germany, Spain, Ireland, and we're just going to keep going and see what else is out there. There's some beautiful cathedrals in Spain. They're both in my Spain playlist and my cathedral and castles playlist. And check out his channel. He's got, like he said, over 100 videos. And let me know what you agree with and what you disagree with. As always, I do appreciate you. And I will see you on the next one. Take care, guys.